The session is designed to engage with club leaders to develop a higher level of insight into employees along with best practices to help teams reach their full potential. In their presentation, Colin Burns and Eric Hutchison of GGA will present the results of the 2024 Club Employees Perspective Study and provide illustrative examples and best practices to bring the results to life. Colin Burns is a seasoned leader in the world of private club management and hospitality. He began his career in 1991 when he joined Wingfoot Golf Club as its general manager. It was a position he would hold for over 3 decades. During his Wingfoot tenure, Colin played an integral role in hosting multiple major golf championships, including the 2006 and 2020 U.S. Opens, and also oversaw more than $100 million in capital projects, including the complete restoration of both golf courses. Colin's passion for golf is only exceeded by his passion for giving back, as he serves as a trustee at the Metropolitan Golf Foundation, an organization providing education and hardship assistance to people in the Met area's club and hospitality fields. Dr. Eric Hutchison is an accomplished industrial organizational psychologist with a passion for empowering individuals and organizations to achieve their full potential. With nearly 3 decades of experience, he possesses a unique blend of expertise in organizational behavior, change management, strategic planning, and workforce development as his role as director at GGA Partners. Eric's academic background further complements his applied experience. He holds a BBA in marketing from Kent State University, an MBA from Otterbein University, and an MS and PhD in industrial organizational psychology from Walden University. We are glad they are both here for us this morning. It is now my pleasure to introduce Colin Burns and Eric Hutchison.
How is everyone this morning? Awake? Ready? Gorgeous. Nothing like the Northeast this time of year. I just want to point out one thing. The sneakers that I'm wearing, this is not a fashion statement. I literally forgot my shoes. I don't want you thinking that I'm trying to be cool, but I literally, as I packed my car this morning at 5:30, I got here and I looked in the trunk and said, I forgot my shoes. Anyway, so I'm not making a fashion statement. I spent 31 years at Wingfoot Golf Club as a GM. It was a great experience. Following that, I'll just give you a couple little tidbits. I then joined Apogee, which again, Hope Sound. Joe referenced what's going on down in South Florida. It's a 1,200-acre 3-golf course, extravagant, beautiful private club, which I now represent as well. And things are going swimmingly there. As a matter of fact, we should be opening the second golf course in just about a couple weeks. Wanting to do a little bit more, I actually was the CEO there for the first year, and I just frankly did not want to live full-time in Florida. I love the Northeast too much, especially on a day like today. You realize how beautiful it is here. So I changed roles. I now head up their ambassador program, which is a membership admissions type program where I travel around the country with a colleague, and we introduce Apogee to various BJ professionals. And having a little bit of extra time, and those of you who know me know that I like to keep busy, I decided to join GGA, building out their executive search program, which has been very exciting for me. We most recently completed the search at Castle Pines for their vice president, general manager, and that was a really exciting opportunity for us. I love their logo, their motto, the best day of golf in America. It's really quite a place, and that was really a fun search. So with that, I've had the pleasure of now working with Dr. Eric Hutchison, who I'll introduce in a moment, but I just want to put a little sort of operational, perhaps, flesh on today's topic. We all remember, and Barry and I worked together for years, we remember a time when clubs would basically just open their doors and staff would just sort of come flooding in. And in addition to that that natural sort of flow of staff, I think we were very, very blessed, and I know at Wingfoot we were, to have families coming, first generation families coming from South America, from Mexico, from Colombia, and it created such a backbone for staffs that I think have lasted the last maybe 20 or 30 years, and those families have now educated their children. Those children are no longer going into the service industry. And it's funny, the other thing that has really hurt, and we all know this, I'm stating the obvious, is that we all thought after COVID or during COVID, we'd have this abundance with all these restaurants closing, that we'd have an abundance of service staff, kitchen staff, and it's just not there. And it's funny, I likened it, I was thinking about it last evening. You know, years ago, the number one, and still probably the most pressing issue in agronomics, is water, right? The need for water. And I thought about it, 30 years ago, we were drilling down 600 feet to find water. And as sort of a metaphor, so now we're drilling down literally 1,000 feet to find water. Well, it's the same sort of thing with staffing, right? We no longer can drill down just 600 feet. We now have to drill down, again, metaphorically, 1,000 feet. We need to use different methods. We need to be more creative. We need to figure out different ways of attracting and retaining, and that's part of it, right? Not just attracting, but retaining staff and giving them some sense of purpose, some sense of because clubs are great places to work, and you'll see that in one of the slides how positive people feel about clubs, and yet we still have problems attracting and we still have problems retaining. So with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Eric Hutchison, who will begin our slide presentation for us on this very topic.
Great.
Eric, thank you.
Thanks, Colin. It's a pleasure to be here. I really look forward to talking with all of you today. As mentioned, part of the presentation is also going to be engagement. So we want to hear from you. We're going to talk about some of the findings of this employee study and different perspectives that employees have. And we'd really like to hear how it relates to your organizations and some of the tactics that you're trying as well. So please, at any time, raise your hand, but there will also be times we pause to ask for your input. Again, we'll be talking about employee insights from a global study that we conducted with all club employees, some of the operational implications for those, and then getting into best practices. As Colin mentioned, I also work in the executive search with GGA. We have been building that out for taking a little bit of a different approach. We're using a competency-based method when helping identify candidates so that we're getting both a fit from a skill set as well as a culture fit for the organization. So it's been going incredibly well. In addition to the Castle Pines, we also recently placed Country Club of Charleston and Delray Dunes down in Florida. I was there just a couple weeks ago. For those of you familiar with us, GGA Partners is a global consulting firm. We have more than 3,500 clients worldwide, executive search and people services. The people services part is the work that we'll be talking a little bit about today, employee experience, training and development, strategy and operations, as well as transaction advisory. The division of GGA that conducted this research is our GGA Institute. There are several areas that we have conducted studies on. At the end of the presentation, there'll be a QR code. You can request those reports. Also, the slides will be in your USB. The three areas that we'll be focusing on today, primarily on the club employees, as well as some of the information from club leaders and club members and how that relates to our findings. So who did we talk to? As part of this study, again, it was a global study of private club employees, and we broke out the findings also from a small subset in the Northeast. So I wouldn't say that we should be drawing any conclusions from the Northeast sample, but it's an idea to say, hey, of the small number of clubs that were in the Northeast, this is how they responded. And again, if we were to conduct an employee experience study at your club, you would be receiving the results of the global study as well as a comparison in place of the Northeast would be your club, so that you can see how your club relates on average to the industry. So, employee satisfaction, employee experience, and employee engagement. A lot of times these terms are used interchangeably. Satisfaction really is the employee happy at work? Employee engagement, are they engaged, right? So it sounds kind of simple, but really an employee could really be happy and satisfied working the night shift, doing the books and not having to interact with anybody. They might not necessarily be engaged, like the person who works your front desk in the morning is talking to members and welcoming them in, knowing all of their names. Employees who are more engaged also tend to be more innovative and also contribute to that culture. And we'll talk a little bit more about why that's so important. On average, 80% of club employees globally are satisfied being an employee at a club. 70% are satisfied with their compensation. The number was the same for both. Those of you who have conducted member studies and measure your Net Promoter Score, which helps you identify the number of your members who would recommend the club to a friend, we conducted the same question with employees, the ENPS. On average, that was just under 23, which according to Hospitality Comparison, 23 is the benchmark. So clubs would be right on par with that, a little bit better with a 30 in the Northeast sample. Two other areas that we asked about is how often employees feel stressed out for a considerable amount of time at work. This one is rather surprising that it's about a fourth of employees feel that way. And a similar number feel that they have been witness to or observed some type of harassment or bullying. How many of you have seen an increase in member interactions with employees, adverse interactions with employees in the last year, 2, 3 years? Virtually everybody.
Eric, I wanted to jump in.
Yeah,
This is one of these slides that really caught my attention. And you think about, we've done member surveys. I remember when I got to Wingfoot in 1991, I said, we're going to start doing surveys. He said, we don't do that stuff here. I said, no, we're going to do that stuff here because I think data is really important. And Barry knows we used to send out the same survey, same time every year. We always wanted to be able to benchmark and compare and look. And in this case, I wonder, because I have to be frank with you, in my 31 years, we never did a true employee survey. We would ask questions from time to time. And this slide really caused me to think about the need, especially when you look at, Joe, you showed those numbers of $17.4 billion of the $32.6 billion is in labor expense. And you think about what we're expending in terms of each department and how much this costs us, and yet how often do we really drill down on the employee satisfaction? And I think thematically it's important to keep in mind, and this is where I come from, the less academic, more sort of practical. There is an undeniable, ineluctable connection between employee satisfaction and the member experience. That's it. I mean, you can't, in my mind, and I think we would all agree, it's impossible to separate. So I think with that in mind, I think an employee, and I'm not trying to pitch, by the way, an employee survey of ours or anyone else, but I think it's critically important. And this slide really, jumped off the page for me in that regard.
Another question we asked is how many are actively looking for another job? And again, we're about a fourth. Let's see, currently looking for another job. Actually, it's a little bit higher in the Northeast than in the total study. But this is just an easy question to ask your employees. Hey, are you happy here? Do you enjoy working here? Are you currently looking for another job? And if so, what are you looking to do? We'll talk a little bit about employee development opportunities and their perspective about training. But to Colin's point, just to show of hands, how many of you have conducted an employee experience study in your clubs? Okay.
And to add to that,
Yeah.
not only are you happy, but the exit interview, which is one of those things that people talk about. I mean, I know senior people who have left clubs who have never been given a proper exit interview. And I think even though we say, well, why did, do we really care why a young man or young woman who's working as a server has left? Well, maybe it's worth asking. Maybe it's worth having HR or somebody spend 5 minutes with them and say, I understand you're going back to college, but is there some other reason why you're leaving and going perhaps to another club or to another industry? So I think, again, the exit interview shouldn't be restricted to just a senior employee who's been there for 10 or 15 years and is leaving.
To Colin's point about having the exit interview, having somebody in HR conduct that, it's also an industry best practice, especially for employee surveys, to not conduct those in-house. Again, I'm not saying, hey, you need to do that with us, but employees are incredibly skeptical of responding to a survey and sharing their opinions. And rightfully so. Usually when those are done in-house, somebody has access to their responses, and they really have a strong level of distrust. But they know that it's being done by an outside firm, and they're promised their confidentiality, and they're submitting it through a QR code or an anonymous link. We tend to see a different range of responses than when we do when it's done in-house, or when they have a unique link, when it's tracked to them. So when we look at the employee experience, and we'll talk about this in a little bit about ways that we measure the member experience as well, but these are each of the areas that are a subset of the survey. These are, for an academic term, constructs that contribute to the overall experience that employees have at work. First one we'll start out talking with is belonging. This is a combination of connection, acceptance, and inclusion. When we ask questions about this, fitting in as an employee, comfortable being themselves, whether or not they feel it's an overall inclusive environment, and whether there's a concern for their interests. So that engagement, that one-on-one, asking employees about their interests is something that is an area that could most likely be improved upon based on these. But fitting in as an employee is much stronger. Go ahead, Colin.
You and I talked about this, I'm not sure if we resolved it. So that last, the concern for my interests.
Sure.
How is that number to be interpreted?
So on average, a little bit more than half of employees feel that their employer has a concern for their interests, that those conversations take place. And again, you have these slides, so I'm not going to drill into the data too much, but when we look at areas for engagement, again, enthusiasm with work, happiness with their job, pride in their job, and going above and beyond. When employees are engaged, these are the things that you can expect and contribute more to that member experience and innovation. This is an area that I think is important to spend time on, because in a little bit, when we talk about employee expectations and leadership expectations for development, employees do not feel that there is as much of a development opportunity for them that there otherwise could be. Do you want to weigh on this one, Colin?
You know, it's interesting. Yeah, I do, and I promise I won't interrupt on every slide. But this is a really important topic, I think. You know, I recently working with a club on a potential search for a new golf course superintendent, and a few of the younger superintendents, very bright, very engaged, talked about what they plan to do in terms of allowing their workers to become their employees, workers, I guess is the pejorative term, their employees or colleagues to cross-train and to take, for example, a non-college educated maintenance worker who's just been working with a backpack blower, and giving them the opportunity to sort of understand the mechanics of cutting a green, understand the mechanics of verification, rather than just keep everything in sort of this siloed kind of way. And I thought that was very interesting. And one of the young men in particular talked about that is their approach to solving this particular issue. Now, I mean, I'm not sure how many servers, front of house people want to go in the back of the house and learn cooking skills, perhaps. But in the case of, and this is a much bigger topic, is what's happening at the university level with agronomic programs, where class sizes have gone to 40 to 4 and Barry, and I've been talking about a few things related to the Metropolitan Club Foundation, whether or not we can support that in some way. But this to me is a distressful number that people aren't feeling that there is truly any career development opportunities.
So I'd like to, again, this is more effective if we engage with you. So I'd like to hear from one or two of you on the types of employee development opportunities or succession planning training that you're doing at your club. Who would like to share what they're doing? Great.
Okay.
I have my hand in the back. If you could just introduce yourself, let us know your
Hi.
full name and go from there. Thanks.
Hi everyone, my name is Manuel Silly. I'm the general manager here at Great Homes. It's good to have you guys. Employees, I think we do a few things for them. They come before the members. And a lot of times, as a member, you feel like, well, the member should be a priority. For us, they're actually the employees. We do a lot of education. We do a lot of, we have a program in-house called Room to Grow, where every leader has the opportunity to give back to their employees. And about 17 employee special days we have, best benefits. We try to give them each 3 days off when we can, so they can spend time with their families. Scholarship fund, we have one in place. And we do a lot because, as I said, without them, none of us can do our jobs. It's easy to have a nice suit, but it's very hard to have a very strong culture for employees. So,
Great. Thank you.
thank you.
Anybody else to share?
I'm coming to you, man.
My name is Colin. I'm the president of Hutchison Golf Club in New Jersey. I think a couple of things that we've found. We've always had a very strong relationship with our employees. We've had 3 head pros since World War II. We've been really geared toward. We have a very strict rule in our code of conduct that members will not address employees with any concerns, but they'll always bring it to management. There's never addressing down to employees. We are, however, challenged by a few things. One of them is, we talk about total comp. We have a really great health benefits program. A lot of employees don't want that. They want cash. They're more interested in especially people of what we would typically call a lot of our grounds workers and servers. They just want to maximize current revenue, current income. So it's sort of sometimes hard to build that, and yet we have an incredibly long tenure for a lot of our staff, including servers. So it's sort of this weird juxtaposition, and I think we're challenged a little bit on the messaging. We just hired a new head pro. Our guy, again, the 3rd since World War II, is retiring, beloved pro. But we're seeing the change now that I think is going to happen with a lot of golf operations, which is moving from what I'll call the traditional pro who likes to teach and sort of be down the range versus somebody who's much more operationally oriented, more retail oriented. And the gentleman we hired came out of a program that was really geared towards that up at Oak Hill. So, I think our perspective is that you can really work hard to reach out to your employees, but you do have to be realistic about what their expectations are. Some of them literally just do want to earn money. We're competing sometimes with landscaping firms who are paying guys top dollar and no benefits. So it's a challenge. And the other major program for us has been the visa program. I think we have 15 people this year from who work in Florida in the winter and come to us in the summer. We could not operate right now in the post-COVID world. We wouldn't be able to operate without that kind of sort of professional role. So, this is
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you. So I skipped ahead. When you were saying what the employees expect. I'll go back to another slide, but just on compensation, club leaders have compensation at 93% as the most important. Whereas even though employees had that as the most important, bonuses, cash bonuses were much more important to them than what club leaders expected. So again, when you conduct an employee study, asking the employees what they want in terms of compensation in terms of time off each week, vacation, other types of benefits. That, again, don't ever ask if they want something that you aren't willing to follow up with or have the opportunity to satisfy, but to find out, how do they want to be compensated, and what's important to them in terms of recognition. Flexible scheduling seemed to be the lowest, but it was also really high in terms of what club leaders thought from an importance level.
That's interesting, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, I found that variation interesting.
And so when we look at this slide as well on employee expectations, again, compensation really close. Something that jumped out here to me is how much lower professional development and training is for employees. And that leads me to, one, want to find out more about those two areas and why there's such a gap. But I also wonder if it's employees that don't have, well, actually, before I tell you what I think, I'd be interested to hear what you think that means when employees aren't placing as high of a value on training or professional development as the leaders are. Why do you think that is?
Likely not planning to stay around.
Okay, not planning to stay around.
They're not planning to stay around.
Not planning on starting over. Okay. Okay.
They have no buy-in into the club.
They don't have buy-in to the club.
They don't
Yeah,
see
they
the
don't see the
value.
future.
Lack of engagement, right? Yeah. So not seeing a future, thinking about leaving, and also maybe not knowing there are opportunities for development, or maybe the training they don't think is effective. How many of us have been to a training session and we walked away thinking it was a colossal waste of time?
I've led some of them.
So when asked about staff retention, employees increase wages, performance-based bonuses, and back to the example you shared about benefits, not as important as the cash. However, work-based benefits were more important in total than recruitment-based bonuses and or housing. So when employees were asked about what should the club be doing to help retain them, here were some of the tactics: increasing communication, recognition programs, flex scheduling, and more opportunities for collaboration. So how many of you, just showing hands, conducts regular town halls with staff? 2? All right, so another area that we asked was, hey, if you've worked at the club, but you've also worked outside of private clubs, how do you compare working in clubs to other jobs? We looked at 3 different categories: from personal fulfillment, work environment, and performance and development opportunities. Anybody want to take a guess at which one is more favorable, working in club or working in other jobs? How many say working in clubs?
Working environment.
How many
Working
say other
environment.
jobs? You said the working environment in clubs is better?
Yeah.
From a personal fulfillment perspective, it is working in clubs, especially when we look at job security, prestige, and exciting or stimulating work. Similar, not better or worse, pretty consistent until we get down to compensation. So back to better in other jobs for compensation and work-life balance and benefits, a little bit of a disproportionate finding there. Very similar findings to work environment, as well as to performance and development opportunities. Good? Yeah, so let's get into the membership study. Any questions about the employees' results before we move on to membership and how this ties together?
There's one slide, and I apologize because I can't see the slides. I only selected the ones that I want to comment on. Slide number, I think we have this
I got it.
25. Employee environment.
Yep.
And this one is sort of, again, this one having having been a GM actually since 1987, which really dates me, my early days at Plano. You know, if you look at the two end results, comfort voicing and then management listens, you know, I think that's so much a part of what we're talking about here, right? It's you know, there's an inability to communicate, and there's a lack of interest in listening on the other end, which I think so much of this comes down to communication. You know, there's just as an aside, there's a really great, this is not, you know, Unreasonable Hospitality, which everyone I'm sure has read. It's a book called The Fearless Organization, and I think it's really, that's one of my management go-to books, about creating an environment where people can not only sort of express themselves, whether it's a server, whether it's a line cook, but not only express themselves, but not be criticized for doing so, and for legitimately being listened to. You know, there's a difference between saying, oh yeah, you tell me I have an open door policy, come in and tell me, and then the door gets closed, you forget what the discussion was. So I think that's one of those things that I would certainly, one of those books that I would recommend, because I think for us to function in today's world, we really need to have, you know, what the author refers to as a fearless organization, where employees can express themselves, and we as senior managers will legitimately listen, take to heart, not criticize, maybe push back, have a conversation. But again, this is another one of those slides that really resonated with me.
I agree with you, Colin. That's one of my favorites. Amy Edmondson is the author of that book. And again, the Fearless Organization is really founded on the principles of psychological safety. And instead of correcting somebody for making a mistake, it's really having a learning environment and understanding that accountability is really important, not overdoing it with the empathy, having the right amount of empathy, but still that accountability and that setting of standards, while also providing a place where somebody can raise their hand and say, I don't think this is the way we should be doing it because, and giving them an opportunity to be heard. They might not be right, and that turns into a learning opportunity, but they also might be right. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit now about some of the results from the member perspective study. And similar to the different constructs that we looked at with the employee environment, we also look at with the member environment. And each one of these, the emotional connection is the most important predictor of retention or attrition for club members. Followed by that is quality, then price, and then social connection. So just like with employees, the emotional connection or that sense of belonging is going to be what retains or exits that member or employee. Motivation for usage, we evaluate that in 6 different areas. And when we look at factors leading to resignation, deterioration of facilities, increased dues, decreased service levels were the top 3. And thinking about values, desires, and resignation, which of these factors can be directly related to engaged employees?
Can I take yes?
Sure,
Number 3.
Colin.
Number 3. I mean, decreased service levels. I mean, again, it goes back to sort of thematically what we're talking about in the connection between employee satisfaction and the member experience. And what we're facing now, and again to sort of circle back to the beginning, we no longer have those families that remain with the club for 20 and 30 years, and there's such a level of familiarity that the minute you walk in, they know exactly that you want lime, not lemon, and 3 pieces of ice, and they want all of those things. And so that's something we're really going to be, I think, as operators, and in some respects I'm glad that I'm sort of at the end of my operations career, not at the beginning, because this is really going to be a challenge to keep that service level at that very, very high level with visa programs, with much more transient employees. I mean, it is really going to be a challenge. It's funny, when I was leaving Wingfoot, that was one of the things that I would have an executive committee meeting once a month during my last year. We would talk about critical issues. And to me, that was the most, and Barry will reference, some of you who are guests at Wingfoot would remember the names. How do you replace Oscar, Caesar, Giovanni? Go down the list, Memo. What do you do when all of those, and we all have those people in our clubs, what do you do when they're gone? How do you replace them? And it's daunting to think about because they've provided such emotional connection to the club. Not just great service, but an emotional connection. And how do you replace that? It's a daunting challenge.
You know, and also, you know, as Colin mentioned, it's replacing employees. If we don't have a strong understanding of what the job profile of that individual is, it's going to make it even more difficult to replace them. So it's really important to have that understanding of what are they actually responsible for, how are they adding value, what are their strongest competencies, and if that's part of their evaluation, their performance evaluation, something that you're constantly checking in on, your leadership team is engaging on, then when it comes time to post a position for that individual, it's a lot easier than trying to think, wow, what was it? What was everything that Oscar was responsible for? So, you know, I want to connect all this on this slide here is in future opportunities. So I think almost all the hands went up when talking about some type of a member study, but not so much on the employee study. So it's really important. I like having doing these at the same time, getting feedback from the members and the employees. But also anytime you're looking at your strategic plan, if you're adding values or services, it's really important to take a look at your employees as well to say, do we currently have the competencies on the team for offering these new services or offerings or expansions that we're going to be doing? If not, how do we develop those, or do we need to hire for those? So those all are pieces of the puzzle that really need to fit together so that the employee perspective and their skill set is being evaluated along with business development plans. Colin, any final words?
No, I would just say that we have to invest more, you know, back to the earlier analogy about drilling. You know, we used to drill down 600 feet, get water, now it's 1,000 feet. You know, we used to just open the doors and employees would walk in, or we had these family connections. That doesn't exist. So whatever we're doing now, it has to be nimble, it has to be creative, it has to be thoughtful. And you know, I mean, I would challenge, I mean, how many times has employee satisfaction been, and this is rhetorical, and I have one other, maybe two other rhetorical questions. How many times has employee satisfaction been an agenda item on a board meeting at your clubs? I mean, as a specific, as critical as admissions, as critical as grounds, as insurance, probably not. How many board members have actually walked the walk with the employees? They've gone to their locker room, they've watched them experience where they eat their meals, and basically walk through, the gentleman from Hackensack smiling, and have actually seen, and in some of the most beautiful clubs in the world, the conditions aren't really always that great for employees. And if you think that doesn't have an impact on morale and retention, you're completely mistaken. I was at a club very recently, and I was down by the maintenance facility, and I was with a former colleague, and in came the carry-all with the trays of food from the kitchen, wrapped in foil. Lord knows what was in those containers, and I had flashbacks of my days at Wingfoot trying to manage, and it was never handled well, and it should have been handled better, and it had such a negative effect on the morale. So those are the things. I mean, put it. If I had any advice for the board members in here, come up with maybe you don't need another committee. I mean, Lord knows most clubs don't need another committee, but have, you know, once or twice a year, have employee satisfaction, employee sort of programming as an actual agenda item where somebody has spent time looking at the locker room, looking at employments, looking at benefits. Maybe in the case of benefits, I know what we did. We cut, you know, we put in a 3-tiered system where the kids who were 25 years old on the maintenance crew, they wanted more cash. We said, that's fine, so we're going to give you a basic, very, very basic, you know, insurance plan. And that helped us sort of balance that, you know, that basic need for catastrophic insurance, yet at the same time it allowed us to compensate them more. So anyway, with that, once again, the member experience is absolutely tied to employee satisfaction. I hope that all of you go back and think more about how you can better the employee experience.
Any questions for us?
How has that changed over the last 5 years? You know, has it been heightened post-COVID? You know, the employee pool
Frank, that's a great question, and I think it's significantly different. I think about, I can assure you that when I got to Wingfoot in 1991, we didn't have a human resources department. Matter of fact, this is a critical issue. Orientation as I was leaving in 2022 was probably maybe top 3 items, because I felt that we were just failing in terms of how we were introducing employees to the club. Really, not just, here's so-and-so, walk around, here's a book. Really getting employees, line-level employees, really engaged from day one. Where I don't think we necessarily did that 5, 10, 15 years ago, since we didn't have to. I think we were comfortable with the fact that we knew we'd always have. Who thought we'd be in the situation where we didn't have employees? We never thought we'd be in this situation, that they would always just be flowing through the front doors. So it's increased dramatically the need to, we have to invest. You have to, it's your number one expense item. Look at your P&L. Look at the numbers that Joe Traver put up from NCA. It's half of those budget numbers that are shown. So to the answer, it's increased dramatically, the need.
Any other questions? Yes.
Any creative things to attack the work flexibility issue, which is a big one at clubs where you need employees every weekend and 7 days a week?
One of the things I think, it's funny, Don Molitor, I'm not sure if Don's here today, he and I were talking about this, and Barry, you and I have spoken about this. The days of the Barrys and the Collins and the Dons, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, working 7 days a week, which I did basically May to October, those days are over. There are GMs now who they're off weekends. I never even considered taking off a weekend season. So what's going to happen is, the whole management structure is going to have to change. At that level, and then as you get further down the line with waiters, servers, and line cooks, but at the senior level, clubs really have to think about the fact that, when you go back far enough, was there an assistant GM? No. There was a GM, and maybe there was a club manager. That whole strata has to be looked at, and clubs, there's no question, are going to have more management to compensate for the fact that you don't have people who are going to be as dedicated as us, quote, and I can't believe I'm saying this, old-timers, as us old-timers were.
Speak for yourself.
You're actually older than me. Barry and I have known each other since 1987 at Plano. But it's true. It's just, it's not just line employees who want a different life. It's senior managers who want a different life. So the whole thing over the next, I don't know how many years, but it's going to change dramatically.
2 other things. One, ask them, what is your preferred schedule? But 2, always put those types of details in the job description. My recommendation is a job description should be as realistic of a preview of the job as possible. You want somebody to be just as attracted to that job description as you want them to be turned off, right? If they read it and they say, those aren't the kind of things that I want to do, those aren't the hours I want to work, great, you save your time not having to read another resume. But if it's laid out exactly what they're going to be responsible for, instead of trying to put it all in there, but really specifically, this is what your average day is going to look like. That's a great way to help bring more awareness to that and attract people that are on board with the type of schedule or activities. Yes?
So just a couple of things. One, when it comes to wait staff, as far as specifically front of house wait staff, part-timers, et cetera, I'm curious if most clubs are still not tipping. So many people who come to, I know certainly to our club, they will become really good at the job and then find a job in town where they can make a whole lot of cash because they're getting tipped. There's no tipping in the club. So is that still the norm?
Question. I know some clubs are going to an interesting concept where there's no tipping, but and this is not sort of a holiday bonus, it's I think the best way to put it, the employees who frequent, I know this at several clubs, and one of them that I'm currently working with, that they basically pool gratuities. It's not gratuities on the check, it's a separate fund that they distribute. And it's actually been rather effective. And these are some, again, some pretty prominent clubs that are non-tipping clubs. And they basically, and again, on that, from an accounting perspective, I have no idea how they handle it, how they run it through payroll, but they're getting money from members as a separate pool, not a holiday pool, but as a gratuity pool. And that has, in some cases, it's actually rather substantial. Hard to argue, Barry.
So, in our club, I find it very unusual that it's fine for shooting, it's fine for bag stuff, but none of the fun of house. It just, I think those days out of hand, and I think clubs have to be realized that you want long-term staff, they need to get what the other staff gets, staff get in other restaurants.
It's hard to argue.
One other thing I was thinking about, going on this, there's a third area, this sort of vendors. And I know everybody has completely different vendors, so various types of service with them, it's probably impossible. But it is something that I think clubs have to realize, that vendors have to be treated with dignity and respect as well. And it's something that doesn't often happen.
I'm going to tell, if we have just, I'll try to tell the story very quickly. It's a little bit self-serving, but it's factual.
Could everybody hear that, by the way? About
So this is about, so this is sort of the Danny Meyer concept. You know, it's vendors, it's employees, and then it's guests, right? So then Andrew Whitelaw, who's actually at Port Marty Golf Club, where I'm a member over Dublin, he is now at Aronimink. He was working for Dubai Golf or Saudi Golf at one point. And he said to me, you know, you're actually quoted in one of the service manuals. God's honest truth. And I said, well, I've never been to the Middle East. I have no idea how that could be. Long story short, it had gotten back to him that I was in the habit of sitting and having coffee or sharing a conversation with one of the garbage men, one of the contractors. I always, and Barry's smiling because he knows, I felt that I wanted every vendor leaving Wingfoot as a proponent of the club. I wanted them feeling good about the club. And ironically enough, I had one key, and I never ordered anything from any vendor, but I had a relationship with them. And I literally, Barry will tell you this, I didn't have a key to the liquor room, I had one key was for my office, that was it. Otherwise, I was locked out of the building. I didn't want any of those other responsibilities. But the point was that he brought back to me, and it was interesting, I was very flattered, that it's critically important, just like treating, in a sense, employees before the members, the vendors, I mean, you cannot have an excellent operation without that relationship with your vendors. It doesn't mean you're overpaying. It doesn't mean you're colluding with them. It simply means you're treating them with respect and dignity, and they will in turn treat your club, your operation with that same respect and dignity.
Any other questions?
We're
All right,
gonna get
there's a QR code here. You're more than welcome to scan that, to request other studies or sign up for our updates. Then our slides are also on the USB for today. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.